Hey there, commercial construction coffee talk fans. Thanks for chiming in. My name's David Corson. I'm your host. I'm also the publisher and editor of Commercial Construction and Renovation Magazine. This is what it used to look like when we were printing it. We're in digital now. It's the last one that I printed, August of 2021, breaking out the archives. I had Mike Guinan, VP of Operations with White Castle. This is their biggest restaurant they ever built. And anyway, we appreciate Mike being on the cover. Let's see what I was doing on the back here. Oh, I was in Graceland. This was a 148-page magazine, but here I was taking a tour of Graceland. We did our retreat there back in Memphis. If you haven't been to Graceland in a long time, let me tell you, it's not just a little house and a souvenir shop. They built buildings of all of Elvis's stuff, and they've got an amphitheater. You could spend days out there. If you haven't been there in a while, you go back and obviously Beale Street and a good barbecue and all that other stuff. But anyway, I always like still touching the magazine, but I don't miss the printer. I don't miss the post office, and digital's been an amazing, amazing ride making the transformation from print face to digital. So, listen, everybody out there that finds our website looking for content and for commercial construction, facilities, real estate, etc. We appreciate you so much. It's just been an unbelievable ride. I couldn't have done it without you. So we really appreciate you, finding us on the web. But I'm sitting here in the house. I've been here now almost 2 months. It's been great. We're finally pretty much unpacked. And I would have been out on the porch, but the guys are cutting the grass, and I didn't want to have to deal with, blowers and all that other stuff. So I'm sitting in the kitchen, and beautiful day out today. Humidity is back. It rained. It was cool, and still in the dog days of summer. School's started. The yellow buses are back on, and I'm just cranking through the remainder of the year. Today, I have the founder of Cardiff. And they're one of the largest lenders that are out there. He's out in San Diego. William Stern. He goes as Will. Will, say hello to our listeners out there on Commercial Construction Coffee Talk.
What's up, everybody? Dave, thanks for having me on. Appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, before we got on, Will told me he was on with one of the local news stations at 6:28 a.m. this morning. I'm like, oh my God, you're up at 3 doing an interview. So he's like, do you know which one it was? I was going, well, WSB, this Channel 11 Live News. Yeah, we know it. So
Okay.
hopefully, well, I'm gonna go find it. I'm gonna Google it when we're done, and I'm gonna go check it out. So yeah,
Sounds
yeah.
good.
Anyway, the reason why I had Will on is there's I just built this house. I had to get a loan, construction loan, lender and this and that. And, it's the golden age right now. There's so much going on in the world today. There's so much opportunities coming down the pike and just construction in general. This is the sector. You gotta have money to build things and buy things and this and that. So I thought it was an appropriate time to have Will on there. And his publicist sent me a nice press release. I was like, yeah, man, let's get him on. So, Will, the way that we're going to do this, we're going to do it in three parts. You'll tell your story, where you grew up, where you went to school, and how you ended up at Cardiff today. We'll talk about the roller coaster we were all on over the last 5 years, lessons learned, any trends that you see, or things that you think our audience out there on Commercial Construction Coffee Talk would find of interest. And then you'll leave your contact info and one positive thought, and we'll finish it up. So, with that said, the floor is yours. Tell us your story.
Sounds good. Well, again, David, thanks for having me on. I appreciate the opportunity. For everyone listening out there that are in the construction trades, I think 2025 is an interesting year. I think the overall sort of sentiment is still positive, and so I have a lot to share today. But before I get to that, I want to just give you guys a quick background on who I am. So again, my name is William Stern, originally from San Diego. I worked, I guess we'll start with university. So I went to UCSD, graduated with two undergraduate degrees, one in political science, one in Spanish literature. I am Spanish English bilingual biliterate. Was originally going to go to law school, took the LSAT, which is the entrance exam in order to get to law school. Didn't really do that well. Didn't get into Harvard or Yale or Stanford. So no top tier schools. And I remember sitting down with my parents and going, well, we've said forever that I was going to go to law school. These scores don't necessarily say that I'm going to get to a great law school. I got accepted like tier 2 schools, and I wasn't excited about that. I'm an overachiever, right? And so that was kind of a slap in the face. And so I said, well, maybe I'll get a job in finance. So I got a job in finance, took a deferral for a year from law school, and I just loved it. I loved working and interacting with CFOs and controllers, hearing their story about how they were trying to grow and scale, spreading financials, balance sheet, P&L, learning about the trends and all these different verticals. My favorite, right, was construction. Why? Because that's what fuels the global economy, right?
Yeah, it
You've got
does.
right, you've got retail, you've got hospitality, you got food service, but the underlying foundation of all those industries, like you were just saying at White Castle, right? You got to have land, and somebody's got to have plans, and somebody's got to build, and there's got to be skilled artisans that understand how to stand up what the owner and the architect have a vision of. And that's skilled labor. That's not going anywhere, right? That's not going anywhere. We'll come to that a little bit later in this interview. But so I worked in commercial finance. I loved it. Ended up getting recruited by the FBI. And so I went through all the FBI training. That was really interesting. Ended up getting a job offer, and it just wasn't what I wanted to do. I wanted to be in finance. I had applied with the FBI while I was an undergrad, and then 9/11 came. And so finally they got back to me, right? Like a year and a half, 2 years later. And they're like, hey, your number came up. We picked you out of a hat, number 55, winner, winner. And I was like, great, sounds exciting. I'll go through the training. And simultaneously, I was working in San Francisco for Ken Fisher, who is, America's, favorite sort of institutional and high net worth private client money manager. And that was cool because you got to work with rich folks. But I think my true passion was, helping businesses scale. So I declined the FBI, and I left Fisher, ended up moving down to Orange County, California, in Southern California. And I started Cardiff. And, how did I do it? Well, like a lot of other people, I owned real estate at a very sort of young age, was very privileged. I remember sitting at a bagel store asking my parents to give me a loan for the down payment. And they said, well, how are you going to pay us back? I said, I promise. I don't know how, but I promise. And so my dad, reluctantly gave me the money, and I bought, when I was 21 years old, fresh out of college, I bought a condo in Southern California. And of course, that boom, if everybody remembers, right, from, 2001 to like, I don't know, leading up to the financial crisis, 07, 08, it was, Southern California was a great place to be at financially, especially, right, if you were investing in real estate. So I made a ton of money, at least at the time. I thought it was a lot of money, a few $100,000. And I took that money and I basically put it into Cardiff. I leveraged that, built a sales force, learned direct mail, right, which is really important for marketing, no matter what industry you're in, construction or otherwise. And I built the nation's largest privately held commercial finance company. So there we are today. We've lent, over the last 21 years, we've lent $10 billion. We're not owned by a bank. We're not owned by private equity. And I run it with my best friends from middle school. So it's
That's
kind of a cool story. Yeah.
Oh yeah, man, that's an awesome, awesome story. I was a double major. I was a political science, economics major. I was
Nice.
really a hockey lacrosse player. That's what I was. I went to University of Denver. In any event, uh,
Yeah. That's awesome.
but
Okay.
most people that do political science go into politics, or they go into law school, one or the other. Like
Right. Or they go into
economics,
this.
political science. I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah.
but I was more on the business side. I think I wrote my, you know, economic development of Burma for my paper. I forget some of the stuff that I
Is
did,
that right? Burma?
but yeah, I don't know. I picked up some weird stuff.
That is
Anyway,
wild.
but
Yeah.
so when I heard political science, I'm like, oh yeah,
Yeah.
But
So I guess you don't go into politics. You go into owning a construction magazine, or,
yeah,
or you go
yeah.
into banking, right?
I didn't know what I was going to do, so I thought economics sounded cool. So I was like, okay,
Yeah.
that's what I'll do. And then I said, yeah, I'll do political. I did the 5-year plan like you.
Yeah.
I took a year off.
Well, I did mine in four. I just like to
Before,
brag.
yeah. Well, anyway, I took the 5-year. I took a year off. I worked up on the mountain. I had my pass. My parents had a house.
Oh, interesting. So you're a skier.
Oh, yeah, I was a ski bum. Yeah, that's one of
That's
the
awesome.
reasons I went out there. And
Mm,
but uh,
that's cool.
yeah, no. So what a great story. And you're working with some of your friends from middle school, and
Yeah.
You
Yeah, I
know,
mean, I'm writing a book right now called "They Lied to You: Work with Your Friends," and it's the story of how a few basically right first generation kids from that live in San Diego beat the odds, worked together, fought through all the feelings that you have with business partners like resentment and regret and you know these acrimonious sort of relationships or whatever. And we beat the odds. We really did. I love to hear stories of other entrepreneurs that grow and scale with, working with friends. And so the one thing that tidbit that I left out, aside from Cardiff, I've, other ventures that I invest in, but the one thing that I think is really interesting that I think your listeners would appreciate. I have a business partner. His name is Brad Lee. He's a big internet personality. He is an entrepreneur. He owns a company called Lightspeed VT. And in fact, a lot of your listeners that are developers or are in the trades would probably know Grant Cardone.
oh yeah.
His program is on Brad's platform. Tony Robbins, Damon John. So it's a training platform to basically train folks on whatever sort of curriculum that you're trying to teach. So, and in any event, he's a podcaster, entrepreneur. He's got an amazing podcast called Dropping Bombs that's out of Las Vegas. And so I have a partnership with him. It's called The Fraternity. And it's basically coaching for entrepreneurs to help them grow and scale their business. We do events all year long. And I know you're, a fan of throwing events. They're really fun, right? They're really fun. The connections that you make in the hallways are sometimes even more important than what you're hearing on stage, right? So who you're sitting next to and who you're connecting with. We put on 2 events already this year. The first one, or the first 2 are called Real Business Growth Summit. We've got one coming up in the fall to help folks use, digital platforms to grow and scale, sort of demystify the platforms, have speakers from Google and TikTok and Meta coming in. And that's called Real Traffic Summit. And so huge fan of that. One of my favorite things of doing it, we fund $1 billion a year, right, in loans to entrepreneurs and business owners. I don't get to connect with entrepreneurs anymore at Cardiff, and that's one of the things I miss, right, connecting with Main Street. And so, by extension, what I do with the fraternity and with Brad Lee is just an amazing opportunity to hear people's stories. Give them the advice that they never got, right? If they're an electrical contractor, if they're a drywall guy, or whatever their trade is, they're a subject matter expert in their field in plumbing, electrical, and drywall, and floor prep, but they don't necessarily know how to grow and scale a business. And to run a successful business, you really there's 2 components, right? It's you have to be a subject matter expert, but you also have to know how to market. And right? I mean, David, you know well, right? Somebody's got to pitch the business, right? Somebody's got to pitch the business. The best kept secret is worth nothing. And so, I'm a huge fan of sort of demystifying how to really scale a business, not grow. Grow means you work twice as hard and you make twice the money, right? Scale means you develop systems and processes. You delegate outcomes to people, not tasks. You let them put their fingerprints on the mission, vision, and values. And at the end of the day, you work less, you build a bigger company, and you sort of remove yourself from the day-to-day, which I think every entrepreneur actually wants. So that is the bio. That is the intro, as long as it was.
it sounds like my life,
Yeah,
What I
right.
know was way back when. No, I'm serious. I listen, I had, I've gone as an entrepreneur when I started out about by myself. 25 years here later, I'm still standing. I went through the internet, .com burst, went through the Bush years that were great. I thought they were very prosperous. And then the economy fell off the cliff in '08 through '10. Then we came back and, it was what it was. And then um, listen, I always look at construction whenever I was visiting a city. I used to walk probably 40 trade shows a month. I don't know how many times I've gone out to Las Vegas and walked the concrete jungle. The
Yeah.
bottom line is I can always tell when I go into a city, I always look for cranes because if there are cranes on top of the buildings, there's construction going on. So
Yeah.
when March of 2020 came, there were a lot of cranes in a lot of cities.
Yeah.
Unemployment was low, interest was low, the inflation, everything was just humming along.
Yeah.
And
Sure.
But I look back 5 years ago, I'm a completely different company than I was back in, March of 2020 when
Yeah.
everything kind of came to a standstill. And the your whole thing about lending and all that, I had to go through all that stuff over when I look back, when I was looking for my investor, when I was building this house, we were looking at hedge funds, we were going this route, we ended, it was all a learning experience, but it was,
Mm, mhm.
you need dirt, you need money, and you need people to get stuff done.
Yeah,
I can't tell you how important. You never want to nickel and dime people that in the skilled trades.
that's right.
If they do good work,
Yeah,
okay,
that's
and,
right.
and they should be able to take constructive criticism. Like I think drywall is so important on the interior of the house,
Yeah,
because if that drywall guy is not good, he doesn't do a good sanding job. Depending on the color of the paint that you use, it can make or break the interior of your house.
yeah,
It's just one of those things. So,
yeah. No,
uh,
it's a great example. When the light hits it, if that drywall guy is not an artisan, right? You're
yeah.
gonna have different textures and different colors. I agree.
So I put the hard like we had 27 interior doors that we had to put in there. You never think that there's that many doors, but there are, and
Yeah, yeah,
and we have tall. Everything's tall in here. So she goes, well, aren't you going to hang the doors? I'm like, no, I'm going to hire someone that does it every day so they glide like air. I'll put the
that's right.
hardware in, but I'm not going to go do that.
Yeah,
You need those. Yeah, first of all, the doors are heavy. You need
yeah,
two people to do the doors, especially
yeah,
if they're just single. Like French, the bottom line is I was like, no, I'm going to hire someone. That was
yeah,
the one thing that and being able to communicate. And now you're bilingual. So I
yeah,
use my phone with like my plumber. He did great work. He was from Portugal. I think, no, was it Portugal or was it Brazil? I think it's Portuguese down there in Brazil. Anyway, he's Brazilian.
yeah,
Anyway,
yeah, yeah.
communication was awful. And
Yeah, you
I
gotta
don't
be able
I
to.
don't know if I could bring him back on the project because I could never communicate with him.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
but he did great. He did really good work. But you've
yeah,
got to be able to have that communication gig. And
yeah, yeah,
so when we were talking about your bilingual skills, that it was really really uh, important that scaling your business. I believe me. There's only so much time in a day. You are worth X amount of dollars an hour. So if you can get someone to do that for you and you can spend your time on making money or what you want to do, I
yeah,
that's exactly what I've done when the shutdown came at March 2020. I had to do
yeah,
some serious soul searching. I remember getting up in the middle of the night before we went digital, and my wife would be like, "Where are you going?" I'm like, "I just got to go down and think." I mean, it was a scary proposition. Here I am. I print my magazine for some 20 some odd years, and what am I going to do? I don't know if who's going to be left over, who's going to get rehired, and it was just it was mind-boggling. But I went for it, and it was. But I also had to go back to school. I had to go back and I had to learn.
yeah. You were telling me that.
I thought I knew a lot about digital. I didn't,
Yeah,
and you can teach an old dog new tricks, and it was it's an amazing time to be alive as an entrepreneur. There is so much out there that's going on, technology, AI. I don't even get, I used to get into the political thing. I just scroll through my phone at the end of the night to see what the heck's going on because I can't control it anyway. But
that's right.
from a business point of view, oh my God, if interest rates come down and we can deregulate the economy and regulations on building and this and stuff.
Yeah,
Here are the things. That everything that you said was so important, and I didn't know
yeah,
about podcasting gigs, so that's awesome too.
yeah, yeah. I have a podcast called A Stern Talk, but you said something really interesting. You said a few things, which is when you're going through hell, keep going. And the other thing interesting that you said was about tasks as a business owner, right? If you truly want to achieve scale, there's low value tasks and there are high value tasks. As an entrepreneur, we tend to be type A personalities where we want to control everything and we want our indelible fingerprints on everything. I don't like the way you talk to the client. I don't like the way you talk to the partner, and I don't like the way you work with that vendor. I do it myself. And the problem is that, like you said, it's only so many hours in the day. So as an entrepreneur, what do you want to spend your time on? Low value tasks that are worth 50 an hour, $100 an hour? Or do you want to solve big problems. And that's $10,000 an hour. And so I think one of the problems with most entrepreneurs is that they never take a moment to really think about what they're trying to achieve. They're kind of just walking and looking at, one step in front of the other as they walk down the street. And the problem is you really do need to get away and you need to plan. You need a business plan. You need to think about what your arc is over the next 5 years and where you want to be. And sometimes when you're sort of, when you're in the storm day to day and you're taking your lumps, it's hard to see, your horizon is way different, right? Your horizon line is way different if you weren't in the storm, right? It's like you're limited, you're myopic about what's going on because you got to deal with employees and contracts, and especially if you're in the construction trades, right? When am I getting paid, right? I want to bid on this contract, but I can't. I got a backhoe that's behind me that hasn't been working, and now I can't bid on that. And so access to capital is important for sure for small businesses. And at Cardiff, I think our mantra is we'll get you approved in minutes and funded same day. I think when people hear that, that is a huge departure from what they're used to, right? What they're used to is I'm going to walk into a bank, I'm going to apply for a loan, I'm going to fill out this piece of paperwork, and in 3-4 weeks, they're going to get back to me, and likely it's going to be a no. And when I get it, I'm going to, walk to the mailbox, I'm going to see that little thin envelope, and that's a decline letter in a number 10 envelope with a little tiny window with a single, with a single piece of paper that says, we regret to inform you at this time, we can't approve you. And that doesn't give you any information back on what you need to change in your business in order to get approved. For us, listen, you have $20,000 of revenue a month, no open suits, liens, or judgments. We'll give you money. Right?
Yeah.
We are easy to work with, and our specialty is the construction industry, right? All the specialty construction trades. So,
Hey, trying to get your hand, if you're a contractor out there, doesn't matter sub, doesn't matter what you're doing, and you never know when you might need an extra, some cash or line of credit to, to finish or, to start the project. It's nice to know that there are other options out there besides, traditional bank, and waiting all that time and all the paperwork and stuff. I just, when I went through the permitting process, I didn't understand why it was so cumbersome. Just to get, I own the land, I pay the taxes on the land, everything else. Why do I have to do all this other stuff?
yeah.
It was, so but lending is no different.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, just imagine you're a contractor, right? It's like exponentially more stressful because, when you're a consumer, you've got one project going. I'm building a house, outside of Atlanta. It's on 10 acres and it's a 5,000 square foot home. Permit process is, maybe 4 to 6 months. Great. But just imagine you're a contractor and you've got 10 projects going, and then you're encumbered by, everything that comes with being an entrepreneur, which is like vendors and partners and employee issues and, access to materials and how are tariffs impacting the cost of those materials. I quoted that job 6 months ago, but now with these new tariffs, well, it's a 30% increase and a 60-day lead time, right? How is that impacting my business? The ability to access cash for your business has never become more important, and also, more difficult in today's economy. I think that's what Cardiff does really well. Again, decision minutes, funding same day, especially for the, construction or the, contractor trade. So.
Yeah. Look, I've been self-employed for 25 years and, trying to deal with a traditional bank just to get my construction loan, on the house here it was ridiculous. And, first I went through, I didn't even try to go through the traditional bank because I knew that they were all just going to say no because I don't show that much income. I just don't. I don't take a huge salary. I have it set up. I had my same CPA for 25 years, and he just
Yeah.
kind of guides me on, hey, what you want to do. And um, uh, so we went the hedge fund route, and those guys were killing us on the interest rate. This is before, you know,
Yeah. Yeah.
it even started coming down. And then we ended up, my wife was in the refi game, way back when, before the crash. So
Yeah.
anyway, one of the hedge fund guys were like, "Yeah, you need to go and get a $250,000 line of credit at the bank, for your house bill. We just want it there for security, blah blah blah."
Sure.
So,
Sure.
so anyway, she had called one of her buds that's with one of the southeastern banks here. I think he's the president. Anyway, she loves my wife like a daughter to him. Anyway, she called me and just to touch base, and he's like, "Where are you?" "Oh, I'm in one of the banks. I'm getting a line. What are you doing?" "Oh, I bought this land." And she's telling, and then the manager came up, "Hey, Mrs. Corson, we're ready to sign your paperwork." And Robert's like, "Leave the bank now. Call me tonight." And
Interesting.
so anyway, so he called. We talked to him that night, and he goes, "Look, if you pay me back with interest and you do a good job on the house, uh, we'll do some other projects with you, because then
Mhm.
my wife had the construction company, and
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
so that's what we did. I paid him back with interest on time. The construction loan conversion to the mortgage was great, and um, it was just such an easy transaction than going the traditional route.
Yeah, I mean, you're lucky. I mean, just imagine you're not you,
I
right? And
know
you're,
that's what
yeah,
was crazy. It was we
yeah.
were, but if I would
I
have
think,
gone in, if my wife would have sat there and done all that paperwork, it still would
yeah.
have taken 6 weeks to.
And it's wild. And it's wild, right? Like, as somebody in the construction business, right? You well know for these guys, having having instant immediate access to capital is so important because of two things. One, they're able to bid on projects that they wouldn't necessarily normally be able to bid on, right? It gives them more firepower, more, something in their arsenal that they can leverage. But at the same time, right, again, two sides to every coin, they could get into a jam. And I think with today and the tariffs, especially if you're in construction, the copper tariffs, right? It's hurting plumbers, hurting so many people in the construction trades. And your price has gone up on materials and you're quoting a job 6 months earlier. It's not like you can go change it based off of the tariffs. And so how that impacts your cash flows, it's deleterious, right? It's how do you keep those same margins? I think, you were lucky, right? Most people, this is my opinion, you got two types of folks who run businesses. One, they run it like a lifestyle business, not like you, and they draw all the money out and they've got the boat and they've got the jet skis, and they got the nice house, and they go on the fancy vacations, the fancy watches, and they're a roofer and they got a cyber truck with their name wrapped around it. It's like that's the lifestyle business. And then you've got guys like yourself, David, who, want to make a legacy company, right? A company that you draw a limited salary, you've got the same CPA for 25 years. You're not running the business to fuel your lifestyle, but you're trying to build and scale a real sort of empire that then you might hand off to a kid, right? The next generation, right? And so I think, for both sides of the aisle, right? The legacy business owners or even the lifestyle business guys, having that access to capital is so important, especially in today's environment where largely, right? And again, you gave that anecdote, but largely small businesses are shuttered and locked out from the ability to access capital. It's not like the old days. You can't walk into like Bank of America in downtown and go, "Hey, I've been with you guys for 15 years. I need 250K today." And, good luck. They sit you down and have you apply for a credit card. And they're like, "Congratulations, 2 weeks later, you got 6K." You're like,
Yeah.
"What? How does that help?" So,
No,
yeah,
hey, I get it, and
yeah.
it,
Because you live it, right? You live it. Right? You're an
well, listen,
entrepreneur. Right?
over
Yeah.
my 25, believe me, we had the big trophy house. We did all that stuff, and we went through all. If there, you can never go back. Can't change history. The scoreboard is what it is, but
That's
you can
right.
always
Yeah.
go back to learn from it. And one of the things, if I had something I could do over, in my earlier days in my entrepreneurship, I would have left more money in the company than I
Yeah.
did in the beginning. But I remember when my CPA came to me, he's like, "Hey, you have too much money, you're going to get taxed. We need to take money out of there. Go find something to spend some money on. Go buy something for yourself. You busted your ass. You rolled the dice. You made it. 9 out of 10 companies don't make it. You've made it. You paid your partner off. You're rolling along. Go celebrate." And
Yeah.
uh, so I went out and bought a Harley. you
There
know?
you go. That's it. Yeah, exactly. That's what they
That
do, right?
I
Yeah.
wasn't even looking for it. I was at a barbecue and someone said, "Hey, are you looking for a bike?" I'm like, "I haven't been on a bike in 30 years." And anyway, he showed me that it was a 100-year anniversary gig, and
Yeah.
some local cop had it, and this guy was on the force. Anyway, I went and looked at it, and the only reason I bought it had a little LED light underneath the tank. It was all chromed out. It was all done up at Harley. It wasn't aftermarket. And
Yeah.
I just told the guy, I said, look, I don't have my license, so you drive it back over to my house, and then I'm not going to nickel and dime you on the check. I'll write it for you, and I know it's a collector's, and I still have it. And
You kept the bike. Yeah. So you
I kept
kept
it.
it.
My wife was like, "Why don't you sell it?" I'm like, "No, it's kind of like a trophy, you know. It's the first thing
Yeah.
that I went on my own, and we did all that, and but
Man,
uh,
it's funny, right? So many business owners, they go through this endless cycle, right? Where they don't learn the lesson. They get the Harley, hard times, they sell the Harley.
yeah,
Good times, they buy it's that old adage, right? Like hard times make for hard men, right? And then weak time or weak, sorry, weak men. I don't know. I'm going to screw up the phrase, but you know where I'm going with this
yeah,
one.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah. You to get strong, you need hard times. You have to go through hell and keep going. But a lot of entrepreneurs, they kind of let down their guard when times are easy, and they fall victim to these purchases that they can't necessarily afford, but they can afford it at that moment. But if you look at like the long-term vision of the company and their, personally their own, sort of financial health, it's not a good purchase. I think it's a testament to you, right? That you still got the Harley. So
when we did our budget for this house, lumber was up and then it started coming down, and we had a guy that had done federal contracting for I don't know 30 some odd years. He did help me with my budget, my estimates, and did the takeoffs, and we were pretty close. But looking back, like when 2020 came, the first thing I did in March of 2020, when everything went kaput. I told my son, I go, hey, we're going to go redo the deck. We're going down to Home Depot and go and get in the wood or whatever. And you and I will do the decks and the stairs. He's like, why? I'm like, yeah, because it needs a facelift, and
mm,
we're gonna put this house up for sale anyway. And if I wouldn't have done that right away, if I would have waited till like April or
yeah,
May,
yeah,
those 2x10s would have been like 150% more money when you look back.
yeah.
You
If
know,
you could actually get them.
yeah, I was gonna say if it was in stock,
If it
exactly.
was in stock, I remember that. Yeah. Gosh, we have learned lessons that like the next generation hopefully will not have to learn, right? But yeah, a lot of us in 2020, right? We learned a lot about our business. Um, I think for us, right, having exposure to the construction industry that largely came to a standstill, we learned that we couldn't take a punch, right? And so we had all this money out on the street, right? We lend, I don't know, $1 billion a year. We had all this money on the street. Then the government says, right? Fauci says, well, we're gonna shelter in place, but we should be good by St. Patty's Day. I think that's what he said. We should be good by
Yeah.
St. Patty's Day. And we're like, all right, a couple of weeks, we're gonna be fine. And then you start looking at, again, any entrepreneur, they're kind of looking at their QuickBooks, if you will, and they're like, there's a lot of debits, right? Banks are taking the money, but there's not a lot of credits.
Yeah.
And so you learn a lot about yourself in time, trying times like that, right? Existential crises. Like you said, you would wake up in the middle of the night, like go downstairs and just do some thinking. Your wife's like, what are you doing? You're like, it's 3 a.m. You're like, I got to go think.
Yeah,
So
what was amazing is I had just bought my mic and I was going to do these interviews on the construction sites. That was my gig. I was going to go out and just do them there,
yeah,
and then
yeah,
everything went kaput. So I was like, okay, I'll just wing it. I'll just go out and do my and listen, I was awful when I look back at some of my original videos that I did,
yeah,
and but I was just laughing at myself. I didn't care. I mean, I really kind of just wanted to have a conversation, but a lot of people though that I've talked to over the last 5 years
yeah,
that one of the people that were could pivot. I don't like using that word because I used it so much, but that could like,
yeah,
stop on a
yeah,
dime and go in a different direction. But they
yeah.
found out so much about their companies and about their people, and that, who could work out of the office and who couldn't.
Yes, yes,
And
yes. Yeah,
net,
absolutely.
so the biggest thing in construction is there were so many people said, 2020 was a rough year. 21, 22 was good. Then 23, it kind of, planed out. And that's kind of where we're at, little potholes,
Yeah,
speed
yeah,
bumps. And but they said if I would have been able to find more project managers or superintendents to oversee those projects, I probably could have done more. But the last thing you want to do, like if you're building a retail store of 10 new stores and you're late on one or two of them, your reputation is just, kaput because everybody
Yeah.
built on when that circular is printed, and that's the construction cycle. Hey, you got to have the punch list done before these things get printed because that's when we're going to do the grand opening and the ribbon cutting. And
Yes.
but I've gone through all that stuff. I mean, I like my son. I like when we built this house. I didn't want some huge house. I already had that. I just wanted
Yeah.
something nice, and I wanted enough room. So if my mother, she's going to be 86, 87, her mother and her grandmother were in her early 100s, so she's got good genes. So she might have another 10 to 15 years. I said, look, there's room for you. There's room for my sis here. We won't be on top of one another. If you guys want to come out or hang for whatever, that's what this is for. And uh,
Yeah.
but looking back, there's a lot of people that I've met over the years that I could tell that they're blowing through their money, or
Yeah.
they're
Yeah.
not they're not they're not they should be more conservative with what they're doing, because
Yeah.
you never know
Yeah.
what's going to come down,
And you got to be able to take that punch. I think, you said this word, or maybe we both said the word pivot. And you're like, I don't really like that word. I think for the guys that are in the construction trades that are listening, I think there's a great lesson to learn. And I think, are you familiar with the company Slack?
Yes.
All right. So Slack, right? A lot of construction people may not be aware of this platform, but it was acquired I think right in the middle of COVID, maybe by Salesforce, right? The CRM company. It was acquired for like $8 billion. And so why am I talking about this? Why is it important to talk to construction people about Slack? Because Slack started out as a video game. And then their programmers built this internal chat so that programmers and all these guys inside of the company could communicate. And they ended up realizing that the game sucked, but the communication platform was really good. And so again, the word pivot can be hackneyed and trite and overused, sure. But I think for guys in the construction trade, like, they don't realize these real life examples where Instagram started as a Foursquare app. So you'd have it on your phone, you'd check in at a restaurant, and then you'd tell everybody that follows you on this app, hey, I'm eating sushi here. And
Hmm.
then they allowed you to post a picture. And then people realize that, or I think the programmers at Instagram realize, oh my God, this is taking off. But it didn't start as a social media platform. It
Oh
started
yeah.
as a competitor to Foursquare. Who's ever heard of Foursquare? Right? It's like saying Radio Shack to the young generation. No one's heard of it. But the ability to pivot, the ability to take a hard look at yourself in the mirror and go, I was a plumbing company, but in my area, right, there's, again, a lot of these contractors are getting rolled up by private equity right now, getting really good valuations on their companies. And it's one of those things where the offer's too good to be true. But if you can grab somebody from a competitor, and that's why I always say, like, don't see your competitors as your enemy, right? Don't see your competitors see them as your ally. Have that sort of gratitude mindset. Keep in contact with them. Know who the head of their sales force is, whatever, the heads of their departments. Listen, you may not be able to get the head of the department, but a lot of times you can get that number two. Why? Because the number one isn't going anywhere. But if the number two feels like there's a ceiling, glass ceiling, and they can't ascend to that next level, they're open to offers. And so if you keep that dialogue open between your peers, right? Some people call them competitors. I say peers, all the better. Because what you realize is if you become limited, like let's say you're a plumbing contractor, if you become limited in your area and you're not necessarily going to move yourself 100 miles north, right, to open up a second office, great. Let's acquire somebody from the roofing side, right? Somebody from the HVAC side. Let's look at somebody from the roofing industry and let's wrap that all into this umbrella. But I think what people are starting to learn, especially specialty contractors, is diversification is everything, right? Apple, started out making a computer, right? How does Apple make the bulk of its money today? They make the bulk of it with this device.
Yeah, cell phone.
Right? Yeah. So it's like, my message to contractors is, look at these examples, the Instagram of yesteryear and its sort of transition, its journey. Slack is another great example. don't reject opportunity, right? Don't be prideful about your trade and say, well, I would never go into that trade, right? Keep dialogue open between, you know, other, competitors and even, guys in different industries, because you never know, right? The ability to double down or the ability to diversify is sometimes, one of the most healthy things for the longevity of a company. So
Yeah, here, just like here, there were certain things that when we built the house, I did. I installed the fence. I did some of the irrigation. There was just things that I wanted to do. We want to put a little pool in the back, and oh my God, after I got the three quotes, I was like, oh my God, this is crazy that it costs this much. I'm in the wrong business. I should be a pool contractor. You guys are making a killing,
yeah,
and then I went and found out how much the pool equipment was. I found out, I'm like, oh my God, we can do this. I told my wife, I go, look, we're going to build the pool ourselves. Let's settle down. We'll dig the hole either in the fall or in the spring, and we'll put it in. But once we do it, we built it ourselves. Not that I want to build a pool, but I want to have it as a service that we can offer. Just like ground up or basements and so forth. And
yeah, yeah.
uh,
You got hit with a zip code tax,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
The
yeah.
contractors come look at your property and are like, "This is nice,
Yeah, well,
right? This
they
is
know anything up on the lake. They know that it is what it. But I almost fell off the chair when the one guy gave me his quote. He goes, "Look, I'm not the most cheapest. I'm not the most expensive. I just do really good work. I've been up here for 25, 30 years. I know all the inspectors, and I know the process. I'll just get it done." And he came back with this Mac Daddy truck all wrapped up and this and
there
that.
you go,
And
there you go."
he's got the big house on the lake and
Yeah,
double dock. And I was just like, oh yeah, he came in and just jacked the rate.
yeah,
But I'm sure that he does awesome work. I just wanted to learn how I could do it myself, just to offer more stuff to be out there
yeah.
and learn from people.
Valuable lesson. Yeah, valuable lesson.
I had replaced fence before. I've gone through a ton of storms and hurricanes, and I've done put, but I never built an entire fence. So this one I did outside, I don't know, it was 39 posts, and I got the two-handed auger, and I did the line. And building a fence straight is not easy. But now that I've done the whole process, staining was a pain in the ass, excuse my French. But it was fun, and I did it. Now I can say, yeah, I can build fences too. Do
Yeah,
I want to do it? No, I don't. I hired someone to do it, but at least I could go out, I could inspect, I can do it, and I know what the process is. And
yeah, yeah.
so as you go into the second half of 2025 and moving into 2026, are there any trends that you see out there with lending that our listeners out there in commercial construction coffee talk would find of interest?
Yeah, I mean, listen, I've got some notes here on my cell phone, on specifically on the economic and market outlook for construction in general. Um, again, how do we come to these hypotheses? We look at our portfolio, and also the metadata from the recorded conversations that we have with clients, right? So, you know, mixed projections. I think, the overall outlook for construction spending in 2025, I think it's overall positive, but growth is expected to slow, I think, significantly compared to the pace of previous years, right? Um, I think projections show overall construction spending increase by more like moderate 2 to 3% year over year. I wanted to specifically highlight like non-residential versus residential because I think it's an important distinction.
Oh
A lot
yeah.
of contractors get like sucked into I'm non-residential, right? And I never do residential, right? But again, being open to extra opportunities, um, for growth and expansion of your company is tantamount to survival. So, I think all of us, on this call, and those who are listening realize that the residential market obviously is struggling with this sort of high interest rate environment that we're in, as well as low affordability. Right, wage growth hasn't moved much, but since COVID, the demand for housing has spiked. It doesn't matter where you are in the nation. If you bought a home pre-COVID and you own a home today, it's doubled in value, but wage increases, right, haven't seen that same sort of ascent. I think we're expecting to see a slight improvement in the residential market come September, right, next month. I don't know when this is going to come out.
Yeah, they
This
say they're going to make a rate cut, but it might be two or three.
maybe
You know,
maybe 50 beeps is what we're expecting, right? A half of a percent. Now, how that affects the greater real estate market, that's hard to tell, right? When the Fed reduces interest rates and injects liquidity into the market, that largely affects credit card rates or automobile rates. It doesn't necessarily, affect sort of residential lending, right? The mortgage rate, whether it's 30 or 50 years, is pegged to like a treasury, right? So if you're looking for a 30-year mortgage, you want to look at the T-bills, right? And then you assume a couple percent above that. But we're expecting some the drivers of growth to do what they do in the latter half of the year, specifically should the FMOC or FOMC to lower rates. Bright spots. I think strong demand for non-residential construction, right? We always, buzzword is like AI. So we're seeing data centers
Oh
and
yeah, data
manufacturing
centers are just booming.
booming, right? And all the large platforms need them. So whether you're, Meta or your OpenAI or your Claude or your Google's Gemini, doesn't matter, right? Everybody's needing these data centers and manufacturing facilities. And I also like to say, as contractors, I'm not a contractor, but for contractors, they need to keep their eyes and ears open to what's going on in politics. That CHIPS Act was passed, and I think that the legislation that was passed largely drives the construction space, right, specific to the non-residential construction areas. And so you got institutional buildings like healthcare and education. Those are the bright spots. I think those mega projects all throughout the United States, doesn't matter what sort of locale or what corner of the nation you're in, that's going to keep all these contractors busy. And then again, right, two sides to every coin, the weak spots. Office, that's dead.
Yeah.
Retail, that is struggling, whether you're brick and mortar or you're click and mortar. Lodging also, right? Not seeing a lot of expansion in lodging. So those guys are facing significant headwinds. I think it's too soon to make a determination about office being retrofitted for housing. Those projects are seemingly very daunting. A lot of retrofitting required.
Well, you
Um,
know what the problem with that is? I mean, every city is, in my opinion. Now,
yeah,
listen,
yeah, yeah,
I'm a miler. I've done plenty of miles. I have my Delta bracelet. I'm not proud of it, but I did it all over those years. And
yeah,
occupancy rates are down in every city. I don't care where you are. They're
yeah, for
down.
sure.
And you
Yeah,
cannot take a building, an office building, all right, that's got a men's bathroom and a ladies'
I was
bathroom.
gonna say it's plumbing. That's the
It's
issue.
plumbing.
It's
Whoever
plumbing.
can
Yeah,
figure out the plumbing silver bullet to
that is
make
the silver
10,
bullet. Yeah,
10, all
yeah,
right, they're going to be trillionaires
right.
because, that's the biggest thing that here's what happened, during March 2020 till today.
Yeah,
Companies have these beautiful offices. Take New York City. Okay, I'm from
yeah,
Philadelphia originally. My mom was from Philly. My dad was from New York. We had a showroom in New York. I get it. But they found out that their employees who worked out of their house during the shutdown, that they can get more done. There's not that jibber jabber at the water cooler per se. Uh,
yeah.
they can get more out of the technology. They don't
Sure.
have to sit through traffic. You get burned out or take the train into the city or the ferry across the New Jersey, whatever it might be. And
Yeah,
what they found out is the biggest thing is, okay, do we want to go hybrid with this office? Do we want to downsize it? Do we want to make it more appealing from people want to come in there? Maybe like in New York, a lot of my clients, Monday, Thursday, and Friday, you don't want to do stuff in because people are getting out of the city. So if you do anything, it's like basically Tuesday or Wednesday in the
yeah,
city.
yeah.
That
That's
goes
right.
for a lot of cities. I mean, I still see cranes downtown Atlanta when I go to the airport, and but uh, I don't go downtown anymore. I just don't,
Yeah,
And the occupancy it's a huge, huge issue. However,
yeah,
there's plenty of new building, and just like I told my wife, I go, look, if we do two spec homes a year, ground up, and you do maybe 10 projects between, a kitchen design or a bathroom or a basement or whatever we're sitting pretty and
yeah,
we're biting
yeah,
off more than we can chew and as long as I don't get arthritis or I go blind
yeah,
she gets on my butt, you're not wearing your readers And but other than that, yeah, exactly. Uh, so,
Yeah.
uh, but I'm just going to continue on because I've become addicted to data, and I can, now, I'm a different company, like I said, than I was, but back in 2020, I'm a digital guy now, and
Yeah, and those are the lessons that we need to teach the younger generation as entrepreneurs, right? Like, sure, we took our lumps, but history has a tendency to like whitewash itself, right? We tend to forget those existential crisis moments. We're like, yeah, no, it was hard, but we got through it. Well, what does that mean to your son or your daughter who's going to take over the business? Like, honestly, being able, and that's why I love digital media, because this stuff is, it's gonna last forever. These conversations, and people can go back and look at YouTube, and they can learn the lessons that largely were forgotten from yesteryear, because it's like, it's like a language that is spoken but has no like written alphabet. Well, great, like stories get passed down, generation to generation, but like, if you really want to build a language, you have to write things down. Well, our way of writing things down today is through video, right? And that lasts a lifetime. And I think the lessons that you learn, the lessons that these entrepreneurs learn, um, they need to be shared. They need to be communicated. Social media is it's not social media anymore. It's attention media. I
yeah,
think a lot of these contractors, they're not sharing their stories. And I think the ones who win in the future, right, are the ones that are discoverable in an LLM. And so a lot of people are listening to this going, well, what's an LLM? You and I understand that, but does the generation that comes from behind us, or the generation come from behind, do they understand the necessity of like, hey, I've got to get data out there, right, digitally, about the projects I do, showcasing what we've done, what a punch list should look like, what the pitfalls and obstacles are in my trade. No, they're subject matter experts who are just focusing on the jobs at hand. But if you put that data out there on a website, or in your magazine as an example, right, the lessons learned are that when you end up going to Chat GPT or Claude or Google's Gemini, and you're like, hey, which contractor should I use in my area? Well, if there's a digital footprint for your business, right? If there's tons of articles and tons of YouTube videos and stuff on Instagram, since that's now discoverable, you're going to get recommended, right? So everybody's like, well, how do I get leads? I always hear that from contractors, like, oh gosh, how do I get leads? How do I get more leads? They're like, I go to Angie's, or I go to this or that resource. Great. That's not the future. The future are these LLMs, the large language models. And so I think, hats off to you, David, because you're the generation that came before me, but you recognized, right, that you were going to need to pivot from print to digital media. Well, the same thing needs to be done for guys who are looking for leads and want to maintain or build a reputation. If you don't build a reputation, right, you end up living the reputation that you deserve,
yeah. We,
right?
we we have a lead service. I used to do them.
Yeah,
I used to do them. I had a research third party outsource, and every issue we used to do a survey with 100 people. We find out how many stores they'd have, how many were
yeah,
new construction renovation, how much they were going to spend, and what products they were running, whatever the advertising base was. And I would take
yeah,
all that and I would send them an Excel file, a nice little PDF spreadsheet, and
yeah,
they'd probably get 100, depending on what category you're in. But when the shutdown happened, I was like, I didn't know what to do. And then I became digital and we figured out, which way we wanted to go. And it was just, you got to keep your mind open. You can be an old dog, you can be taught new tricks, but it's really, the biggest thing is, in my opinion, having a person's personal cell phone and a personal email is like
mhm,
gold in the
yeah,
digital age
yeah,
because those
yeah,
two things you can text, you can do Zoom, you can send email, you can send a voice. I mean, there's so many things that you can do to have those conversations. And I can't, like my son, he didn't even know what a magazine is. He's looking at
yeah,
his watch. So when we got out,
yeah,
like he didn't know what it was. And a lot of I'm 62, so a lot of my clients, they're getting older. I just got a guy the other day. He's like, "Hey, I saw the new issue. Can I send you some print? Can I get a print copy of it?" Now, I know this guy wasn't, a youngster. I knew he was
yeah,
older. He's old school. He wants to hold it. And I went back to him and said, "Hey, I appreciate you. I have a print on demand, but they're a little pricey to get one. But if you want, I can quote you on it, if you want to hold it. But we're digital. That's just, the name. And down the road, everybody's going to be digital. I look at
Yeah.
magazines, they're 20 pages. There's nothing in it. Those guys aren't going to survive. I was
Yeah.
just lucky because I had one. But you got to see the writing on the wall. And
Yeah. I listen, the writing on the wall is so important. The largest company in America at the turn of the 20th century, so going from the 1800s to 1900s. Do you know what it was? The largest company in America? You want to guess?
I'm thinking something maybe with along with Eli Whitney and the Cotton Gin or something. I don't know. I'm thinking back to
It's
history.
a good guess. It's a good guess. Some people say oil, or some people would say rail, but the largest company that transitioned from the 1800s to the 1900s was the American Saddle Company.
Yeah,
Do you use a saddle today? I
no,
don't
but I
use a saddle.
grew up with horses, so I'm very familiar with them.
Yeah, well, they don't exist any longer, and that is, the allegory. That is the story, because if we don't see the writing on the wall, right, then we become extinct, right? And so waiting to become extinct is not a business plan, right? Hope is not a business plan. You making that transition from, print to digital, you probably did it early, to be quite honest, right? There are still some trade mags that, yeah, we're in circulation, and you're like, why, right? Don't you have a bean counter that's telling you like this is not a good decision? Like, we are spending all of our excess cash flow on printing this. Who People don't even read it. They take it and they put it inside their office next to, an end table where people who come in to interview are sitting there before their interview, and they're flipping through it, right? You're not getting the eyeballs you want. And if you want to monetize, as you and I both, well know, it's got to be digital, right? It's got to be digital. I've got this crazy story, and I won't keep you for too much longer, but Cardiff, right, as a lender, we started out as direct mail company, right? So how did we get our leads? Well, we'd spend, umpteen millions of dollars every month
On
sending out
database.
400,000
Yeah.
envelopes every month. It was asinine. Why? To print it was 10 cents. For a stamp was 50 cents. Now multiply that out, right? We're sending 400 or a million, whatever. How many times does that, and this goes back to your point, does that envelope actually get to David? Well, in front of David is Lindsay at the front desk who gets the mail. And Lindsay's looking through all the mail going, that's garbage. That's junk. That's garbage. That's junk. So for us to get to David was really, really difficult. My aha moment, just like yours, happened, I don't know, 10 years ago. And I walked into the Cheesecake Factory, the restaurant, and I'm walking to my table, and I'm noticing, flanked to my left and right, are couples. Didn't matter the age. Could be my age, could be younger, could be, grandparents. And they're all glued to this.
Mm-hmm.
They're all glued, and they're not talking. They're just sitting there on their phones. And I said, as I'm walking through the restaurant, that was the inflection point. That was the aha moment where I'm like, why are we spending all this money on direct mail? We need to be digital. We need to be on Google, right? And this is before even Instagram. We need to be on Facebook. We need to be on all these platforms. And so again, there isn't like this irrational sort of like pivot, again, to use that word, where we just took all of the chips off the table and put it on black. We just cautiously moved chips. We earmarked chips for digital, and we kind of pared back, which any business, right, can sort of understand that strategy. You don't want to be impulsive, right? You want data to lead the way. But we ended up realizing that, hey, the cost to acquire a customer, the CPA or the CAC, was demonstrably better in our favor, right? Shifting from print to digital. Why? Because it was easier to monetize those eyeballs.
Oh yeah.
So great lesson to learn, especially for young contractors. The generation that comes after, us. It's
I
like, hey,
still I, I still believe in snail mail though. The reason being is I used to get so much mail. I would used to get these big binders. People would send me, for media after they scan my
remember
bag.
catalogs? Remember
Oh
catalogs?
yeah. I mean, I'm telling you,
Restoration hardware.
I had my PO box for 20 years before
Yeah.
but it
Yeah.
used to be chock full of stuff. Now I tell people that get our lead service, I'm like, look, pick 5 people. your top 20 contacts out there and go on to LinkedIn or wherever, Google, whatever, go on AI and find out a bridge that you can do with this guy. Maybe he went to your university or whatever, but send him
Yeah.
just a handwritten note. Hey, blah, blah, blah. I think I can shave a few percentage points off your budget. I'd love to be able to talk to you. Here's my card. I'm going to follow up here with you in a couple of weeks. Since you don't get a lot of mail in your mailbox these days, and
Not a
everybody's
bad
digital,
strategy.
you get a piece of email and you're like, oh, wow, what's this? You'll probably open it. And if you're not aggressive or if you have a fun tone in the way that you write, which takes practice, but people will open it and they're like, wow, that's really cool because a lot of people don't. So, like myself, I always try to do, at least 10 to 15 calls a day. I like to do X amount on Zoom. Everybody's, I like using everything that I can, but snail mail I still believe in. But digital is, that's where the eyeballs. There's 8 billion people on the planet. They're all on the web. You could
Yeah.
be in
Yeah.
Muskogee, Oklahoma, and just start a website. You're a global company because everybody
Yeah.
and because of this, because
And
everybody's
if you,
attached to it.
yeah. And if you crack the code on how to do it, sometimes again, that realization is that I can create a lead service that is way more profitable than running my specialty contractor, right? Like, you know, I'll give you an example. Like Google, I host these events called the Real Business Growth Summit every year. And I get people from Google and YouTube and TikTok and LinkedIn, and they all come, they're all like senior director levels, right? So they come up there and they're demystifying the platform to the attendees, saying, well, listen, these are the best practices to leverage our platform to grow and scale your business. Well, it's like, hey, if you realize that like a lot of these lead services, Google included, they're not selling the lead once. They're selling the lead 10, 20 times. So if you click into that auction, like whether you're on Angie's or otherwise, residential construction, residential contractor, you're buying a lead that's probably being sold 20 different times. So it's like, it's incumbent upon you. It's required. Like jump on that lead immediately before the other 20 contractors get access to it, right? And that's important. But again, maybe you realize that like if your son or daughter, or your nephew is really good with technology, if you can build a funnel, like a lead funnel, well, that could be way more profitable as a business. And then, again, it's rinse and repeat. If you can do it for electrical contracting, you can do it for plumbers and HVAC and drywall. And, you just realize that like there are going to be billion-dollar companies that come in the next 5 years that are led by a single person.
Oh yeah.
Right. And that's all because of this. And I think it's a testament to what you said, because it's like a lot of people don't realize how powerful this is. We death scroll on social media, but we don't, as business owners, realize that like a voice note to an old client can spur them calling you back and saying, actually, I do have this project. And it's like, as business owners, we're always worried about what? New leads. But largely our old client base,
Your best lead
right? That
service.
best leads ever. And all it takes is a little bit of nurturing, a handwritten letter, a voice note, a voice memo, um, you know, putting a call on their calendar. That's so easy. You send them an invite from Google or Microsoft for a date and a time and just says, I'd love to reconnect. Da, 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 da. It shows up on their calendar. I mean, it's like you were able to leapfrog over there, the castle wall. You don't have to deal with Lindsay at the front desk. Put something on their calendar. Maybe they accept it. And you're over Zoom and you're like, dude, I haven't talked to you in ages, David. Tell me what's going on. What kind of projects are you doing? Zoom is amazing.
Yeah.
So,
Listen, Zoom is not, I look at like Zoom, I just tell people, if you're in construction, you can use Zoom that will affect your travel schedule. If it's just, you have to drive 2.5 hours to go look at a roof curb, it's going to take you 2 seconds. Do it
yeah,
online. But if
do it.
you're working on land in a $30 million build, go out there and meet the guy on the construction site.
Yeah. Shake his hand, look him in the
Shake his
eye.
hand, go meet him at the office. You can pick and choose where you want to go. And and listen, I was an event guy. I get it.
Yeah.
I get the in face. You can never ever replace that. It's so important. However, this just makes it so much easier where you can pick and choose
Yeah.
and and you can get the basically where everybody's at, but
Yeah.
that
The
in-person.
face to face. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I know we have to wrap up,
Yeah.
but I would say that, um, you know, for the economic landscape, right? I'm in finance. And I think for those that are listening that kind of want to understand what we're seeing, I would say, the economic landscape of 2025 is really engineering this need for a financial partner that truly understands the trades. I think, as a commercial lender, Cardiff funds trades. That's what we do. So finding a partner like Cardiff that understands the trades, that understands the tariffs and the high material costs and the long payment cycles, I think we're great for contractors for flexible lines of credit and working capital. Um, you know, there's an ongoing skilled labor shortage, and I think that's only going to get worse as sort of like automation and AI replace sort of human skilled labor. Um, and you're going to need, advanced machinery to kind of maintain those same productivity levels. There's a huge demand for equipment financing, like the growth year over year for construction is like 5% year over year. So it's like to have that capital on demand, right, to invest in, again, not necessarily skilled labor, but the machinery and the automation tools that are going to replace some of that skilled labor to become more efficient, to become more competitive, right? As the larger companies get bought up by private equity and are able to like push around their weight, right? And they'll lower prices, then you find yourself with like shrinking margins. Well, equipment financing is an amazing tool. So it's like, again, right, like in closing, right? Construction sectors, some of them boom while others, sort of slow. But I think, we focus on the health of the contractor and their projects. We're looking at the cash flow. And I think providing financing to all trades, it's one of those things where it's like, we can only do so much for the construction economy. But in our opinion, right, rising tides raises all ships. I
Mm-hmm.
think the more that the trades realize that there are allies, there are resources in the financial sector like Cardiff that want to help them grow and scale, that aren't transactional in their approach. I think that is, that's the beacon, right? That's the lighthouse. That's the hope. Because I just I don't see the large banks cozying up to the small businesses, to the entrepreneurs, to
No.
helping them like fuel their growth, right? They don't want to hear a story. They don't want to hear projections and stuff like that. And for us, we're okay with stuff like that, right? We want to understand the story. We're a small specialty lender that, I don't know, 40% of our portfolio is construction,
Mm-hmm.
probably even more when you start looking at some of the specialty trades. So,
Yeah.
um, yeah, so I appreciate you having me on. I appreciate the opportunity to wrap with you. And,
So
you know,
if there are any subs or just GCs that are out there and they were thinking about getting a line of credit, or maybe they were looking for someone else because they don't like the person that they're dealing with right now, how would someone reach out to Cardiff or yourself, or what
yeah,
should they do?
yeah. So you go to www.cardiff.co, cardiff.co, and you can apply in minutes and you can get funded same day up to $500,000. So, if that's something on the horizon, you want to kick the tires and see what like financing looks like, whether or not you need it today, or you may need it 90 days from today. I think it's better. It's one of those things where it's better to know us and not need us than the inverse, right? Than the reverse. There's no ding or hard impact on your personal credit, right? We're basing this off of your cash flow and your business credit. So I think, it's one of those things where it's like today's financial literacy day, believe it or not. So I think for small business owners, I don't know when this is going to get published, but today is the 14th of August, it's financial literacy day. And I think for so many entrepreneurs that are subject matter experts in the construction industry, they're not necessarily financial experts, right? They're subject matter experts. They're drywall guys, they're HVAC guys. Just knowing that you can go to cardiff.co, you can apply in minutes and see if the financing matches your expectations. You have a big project coming up, great. Get a big line of credit, right? Get 250, 300, 500 grand as a line of credit. If you don't need it, great. It just sits there at no cost to you. and it doesn't necessarily impact your personal credit. So it's like
Mhm.
it costs you nothing but 3 minutes to get approved, and if you need it, funding same day. So in any event, thank you again for having me on, David. That was awesome.
Yeah. So listen, I'll put that in the description, and when I edit this, I'll put that website in there as well. But cardiff.co.com. As we finish up, a couple things. Number one, if
Sure.
you're on a construction site, we want you to be safe. We want you to get home, have dinner with your spouse, your hubby, your wife, your kids, your pets, laugh, watch some tube, get some REM sleep, and be able to go do it the next day. Number two, drink some water. This is the athlete in me. You got to stay hydrated on the construction site. When you're dehydrated, you make mistakes, you get headaches, you might get some stitches in your finger, whatever. We don't want that to happen. So put some electrolytes in your bottle. And it doesn't matter if it's summer or winter. You stay hydrated, you're going to have a better day. You're going to sleep better at night. And you're going to have that much better day tomorrow. So stay liquefied. Last but not least, hit the like button so we can the YouTube algorithms out there will find this episode and hear what Will's thoughts are, about lending, et cetera, and the Cardiff ease of getting that line that you might need either today or down the road. So with that, one final thought. What's your final thought or positive phrase that you'd like to leave with our listeners as before we sign off?
Yeah, I mean, I think it goes back to my advice, which is, forget what people say, the naysayers. Working with friends works, right? Have clearly defined roles and responsibilities. That limits resentment. Let everybody put their, fingerprints on the mission, vision, and values of the company, and you're going to come out the other end healthier, happier, and richer.
Hey, there's no I in team. You can't do it all, so you might as well hang with your friends and do it and have fun. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah. Cool.
Hey, listen,
Thanks again for having me on.
no, I thoroughly enjoyed it. Will, say goodbye from SoCal.
Yeah. Hey, signing off from San Diego, California.
And I am going to sign up from Lake Lanier, Georgia, about 30 miles north of downtown ATL, the LA of the South. And everybody, listen, have a great rest of the week. What's left of it? You got TGIF tomorrow and the weekend, a couple more weeks. You got Labor Day, and then boom, before you know it, you're going to be in the holidays. And then we're going to be closing out 2025, and it's going to be 2026. So keep your blinders on, stay positive, get rid of all those negative thoughts, and keep moving forward. Hey, Will, if
I
I
love
get
it.
out to SoCal, I'm going to look you up. I want to meet you in person, all right?
I'd love to. Yeah, come on out. We'll go do a run together.
All right, sounds good. I'll bring my shoes. And with
Sounds
that
good.
said, hey, everybody, we will see you next time on another episode of Commercial Construction Coffee Talk. Will, thoroughly enjoyed the conversation. I appreciate it. All right.
Likewise. Thanks, David. See
All
ya.
right. Cheers, everybody. We'll see you next time.
Adios.
Adios.